What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Bobby Harding. This is your sermon preview on Saturday for worship, Sunday, October 15th, 2023. Thanks for tuning in. Okay, we are continuing in our series of sermons based out of the Scots Confession with, I will just say that our affirmation of faith that we've been doing, this blurb from the beginning of the Scots Confession, is the first time I read it, I thought this is the most confusing phrasing I've ever read. I stand by that. It's very confusing, but it's good. Cleave, serve, worship, and trust. And this Sunday, the word we're diving into is worship. Now, if you're watching this, if you watch the Saturday sermon, there's not very many of you who do, but I almost, you know, the expression of like preaching to the converted or preaching to the choir. I feel like that. So the text for the sermon is Romans 12, verses 1 through 8, which is interesting that it's Romans because if you may recall, the last month of summer we were in a series on the book of Romans, and the last sermon we preached out of there, that I preached out of there, was Romans 11, and it just so happens that this week's text is Romans 12, which, you know, go figure. We're still in Romans. I can't get away from it. But this is good. Romans 12, I mean, all of Romans is so practical. And this is no exception. So it's really interesting. Worship is mentioned several times in the Scots Confession. They never really talk about what worship is. It is assumed that people know what worship is. The way that they talk about worship in the Scots Confession also assumes that we all know how important it is and how central it is to being in the church. So we're going to talk a little bit about what worship is. What do we mean as Presbyterian Christians? What do we mean when we talk about worship? What is it? I'm also going to talk a little bit about Dr. Seuss. Going to talk a little bit about mystery, humility, transformation, conformity. I'm even going to talk about the Presbyterian Book of Order, which I know always puts people on the edge of their seats. We're going to single out people who skip worship and make a habit out of skipping worship. I'm just kidding. We're not going to do that. But sort of the driving force here that Paul is getting at in Romans 12, that John Knox is getting at in the Scots Confession, is that worship is critical to who we are as the people of God, central to who we are. And without it, we got nothing. In worship, big things can happen that don't happen anywhere else. And through worship, we are equipped to participate in God's mission in the world. And in order to participate in the mission of the world, God's mission in the world, our minds need to be transformed. We need to be jolted into new ways of thinking ways that align with God's desire for the world, not our desire. Our desire is conforming to the patterns of the world. We don't want that. We want to be linked up with Jesus and with what Jesus is doing and with what Jesus wants, right? All of that happens through worship. So there's no question about how important it is. And those are some of the things we're going to talk about tomorrow in worship. Listen, the Fall Festival's coming up. Let me use this as an opportunity to remind you of that. We need volunteers. Please look for links to volunteer for the Fall Festival. There will be some information tomorrow at church, of course. But that's coming up on the 25th of October, and we're very excited about it. It's going to be fun. That's all I've got for you, folks. Have a wonderful Saturday, wonderful day, wonderful night. Get some good sleep. Don't skip church tomorrow. Don't skip worship. See you then.